Welcome to the National Scrapbook Day Project Workshop. I am Megan Jax out in Washington State, and I'm joined by Tessa Chappell. She is in Indianapolis, or just north of Indianapolis. I should say she's not actually in Indy, but close enough. So for today's projects, we're going to be putting together the National Scrapbook Day project recipe and the project booklet, the customer bundle booklet. I'm getting it all confused on what it is, but we've got like 7 2-page layouts we're going to be putting together. So the first part, I'm going to walk you through how to do the actual project recipe. So that is the two-page layouts that are all included in the one of the little baggies has the paper, has the stickers, has the directions all in there. So I'm going to walk you through how to do that. And then I will flip this back over to Tessa for the second, I don't want to say second half because she does have a little bit, quite a bit more she's going to be showing you, but there'll be an additional 4 or 5 two-page layouts that we'll be putting together. So yeah, there's quite a bit in this whole set that we're doing. And it was all part of the customer bundle. So if you're catching this video on YouTube later and you don't have any of the supplies, there will be a link in the description below that'll tell you exactly what you need. But I hope if you're joining us today live, you saw all of our the supply list that you need. This is going to be, a great set to put together. It's pretty straightforward. So hopefully it'll be an easy one for you guys to follow along. If you just want to watch it while we do it, you'll be able to come back to that recording later and stop and start as you need to put everything together. All right, so I'm going to switch over to my overhead camera and we will go ahead and get started. All right, so I have already put together the project recipes. I made little minor variations, maybe flipped some paper in my sample just because I wanted to play around with it a little bit. So spread number 1 is this spread here that we're going to be putting together. And you can see if you look at your spread 1 versus my spread 1, I think I maybe alternated the colors. Like I just flipped the papers over. These two right here, but everything else I put in the same. So super cute, bright, beautiful blues and the oranges and everything in there. So that's going to be spread number 1. And then spread number 2, give you just that quick preview. You can, of course, see it all in your handout. Here is spread number 2. So you're going to see that we will need to use the custom cutting system. So you are going to need circle number 2, which is the medium circle, and circle number 3, which is the large circle. You will also need the red blade. Oops, that's the blue one. You'll need the red and the blue blades. So you'll want to have both your custom cutting system circles and your red and your blue blade available. All right, so to get started, we are going to work our way through the cutting guide. You will get your paper out of your kit. We are going to be cutting 4 pieces of paper. We need to cut one of the tangerine plaids or the gingham. It has the mushrooms on the other side. We are going to need to cut one of the blue, tonal blue pieces, has the blue cone flowers. We are going to need to cut one of the green wood grain. The opposite side of the green wood grain is the white mushrooms, or excuse me, beige mushrooms, because that's our last piece that we're going to cut is going to be the beige mushrooms. So here are the 4 pieces that we're going to be cutting. The other pieces here are going to be, they will be used probably as full background pieces, base pages. So there's tangerine, blue, the blue cone flowers, and then the mushrooms. You can set those aside for the moment. We're going to start off with the tangerine gingham. Now, the big thing here to know for the tangerine gingham is they do not tell us that we need to use a certain direction when cutting this, but it definitely matters. Definitely matters which side, which direction our paper is when cutting. Because piece A and piece B, they are along the bottom of spread one. So we need to make sure when we cut this that our mushroom tops are lined up on the side. So instead of cutting the gingham up, I want you to flip it over and make sure you've got your mushrooms, and you're going to make sure your mushroom tops are going to be over here to the side. They can be either direction, but they need to be sideways. We need to make sure we cut those strips A and B, need to make sure with our mushrooms. I messed this up when I did it. I was working on it at my retreat, and Tessa will attest that I was quite upset when I realized that I had made the mistake, which was just a little bit of an error on Creative Memory's part for not having. Typically, they do tell us when the directions matter, the direction of your paper, but this time they didn't. So you just want to make sure when we cut pieces A and B that mushroom tops, mine are over here facing towards the left. And I'm going to go ahead and cut that at 3 inches. I need 2 strips that are 3 inches. I'm using a straight blade. Everything will be done with a straight blade. If you really wanted to get fancy, you probably could do some things with the decorative blades, but we're going to be layering some stickers across the top, so it really won't show. So here's another 3-inch cut. This is piece B. Now to cut pieces C and D, I can tell that this rectangle area here is 9 inches tall. So I can take my piece here and I can rotate it, bring out my arm, and I'm going to bring this over to 9 inches. At this point, it doesn't really matter. It's going to be your direction, which is 9 inches here. This smaller piece is going to be where we're going to cut circles E and F out of. So you can set that to the side. We'll cut all of our circles at the end. This piece that I have left that's 9 inches wide, I'm going to flip it over and have it be more portrait orientation. So my 9 inches is top to bottom. And I'm going to cut off 1 inch. I need to cut a 1 by 9 inch strip. That is piece C. So I'm going to line up over here on the right side of my trimmer at 1 inch. And I'll go ahead and cut. So I have piece C and piece D. E and F are circles that'll come out of my gingham piece up here. So I'm just going to stack my pieces of paper, my cut pieces over here with the side up that they tell me to use. So I'm going to be using the mushroom side of these strips. I'll see the tangerine gingham of these strips. Next up, we're going to use our coneflower paper, which is the blue. We're not using the reverse side of any of these pieces. And the coneflowers are largely non-directional, so you don't have to worry about which direction your paper is facing. Our first cut we're going to do is piece G. It is 4.5 inches wide by 9 tall. So we're going to cut this to 4.5 inches wide. 4.5. And then I'm going to rotate. It needs to be 9 wide, so you can bring your arm out and bring it to 9. You could also cut 3 inches off the other end. When I look at that 3-inch piece, this piece is going to become scrap. So if you want to start a scrap pile, you can do that. So here's my 4.5 by 9. I need a 4 by 6 piece is going to be piece H. So I'm going to cut this 4 inches wide. And once, the 4 inches wide, that'll work. Yeah, 4 inches wide. This 4-inch piece here, I'm going to rotate and cut it 6 inches. It's going to give me a mat. 6 inches. This piece right here, I can see that's where they want me to cut a circle from. That's this scrap piece. So I'm going to go ahead and put this up here with my other circle piece. I should have a 3.5 inch piece left, 3.5 wide by 12 tall. I need to cut a 3 inch piece. I should then have left a 1/2 inch on the other side. So I'm going to cut a 3 inch piece, and then I'll have that 1/2 inch scrap left over. It's not a scrap, it's actually piece J. So I'm cutting I right now. J will be the other side of this. So here's I and J. Next up is going to be the green wood grain. We do see in our cut guide here, they want our grain to be going vertically, top to bottom here. Our first cut is going to be cut L. It is 7 by 12, so 7 inches wide. And then we need to cut 2 4 by 6 mats. Those are M and N. So I'm going to come over here, measure it to 4 inches wide and cut. I will have a scrap. This green piece, 1 inch wide, is going to be a scrap. My 4 inch wide piece here, I'm going to turn and cut at 6 inches. So you have 3 pieces that you cut out of the green wood grain. Next up, we're going to cut the mushroom paper. Now in our sample here, the cut guide, we can see that the mushroom tops are oriented towards the top. But I've got a 1/2 inch piece that I want to cut off first. And you see that 1/2 inch piece that runs across that top edge of the paper. So when I do that, I'm actually going to rotate my paper 90 degrees. My mushroom tops are over here towards the, it doesn't matter whether I cut this from the top or the bottom of my paper. I just need to make sure my mushroom tops are going to the side. So if I wanted to cut it from the top edge of my paper and I say this is the top, I can flip it around so that my mushroom tops are going over here to the right side. They need to be going to the side, and cut it 1/2 inch. I need a 1/2 inch where my mushrooms are going up and down once I reorient it horizontal. So 1/2 inch, mushroom tops to the side. You want to make sure your mushroom tops, oh, it's not going to focus for me, but you can kind of see. Well, my camera won't focus there, but they were going to the top. Now, we get the loveliness of trying to cut out these pieces. They have us, the way they have them situated on here, I'm pretty certain you can just cut this all the way down. I think what I'm going to go ahead, this was a little bit tricky the way they had it in here. The next piece we want to cut is going to be 2 inches wide by 9 deep. So if you want to try to cut it and leave your big body of paper, you certainly can. You can come in here at 2 inches and you're going to cut down to 9 inches. All right. So if you want to do that, you certainly can. You could probably just cut all the way down. There's going to be plenty of areas for us to get that white, that 2 inch circle out of. But if you don't want to cut it all the way down, you don't have to. Or bring it down. Remember our white, let me bring my arm in, our white line right here. If we find our 9 inch measurement on the bottom here, line it up at 2 inches here. Bring my white line to where that 9 inch is and cut up. So I've done a partial cut. Then I can rotate my paper and of course it has to be a little complicated. I'm going to flip it over. So I see the green side. Come here to 9 inches. Bring my white line down to the 2-inch and cut. There's my 2 by 9 inch strip. I'm pretty certain you could have sliced that completely there and you would have been fine. All right. So next piece I need is a 4 by 6 out of this piece right here. So the same thing, I'm going to come in, I'm going to line up this corner at 4 inches, flush at the top, 4 inches, come down here, find my 6, bring my white line on my edge of my blade housing, and I'm going to cut. I'm going to flip my paper over, line it up at 6. I've got space to do it up here. That will nestle clear up at the top. I can still bring it with the green side up. Here's my cut. I'm going to line this up at 6 inches. White line at 4. And cut. There's my 4 by 6 mat. Well, use the reverse sides. We'll use the green side. Now I've got this lovely stair-stepped piece of paper to cut some circles with. So a little bit more complicated there. I really think I probably could have just, you could find some ways to just bring that down. But this way I've got the whole piece to pull from to make my circles. Since we've got this piece with us right here, we'll go ahead and just start cutting our circles with it. Circle R, S, and T, the larger circles on the beige mushroom page, are all made with circle number 3, our largest circle, red blade, inside track. That is going to give us a 3.5-inch circle. All right, so that they tell you that it's a 3.5-inch circle. And in the other parts of the directions, they give you the tip. They tell you the 3.5-inch circle is using the inside of the largest CCS pattern, which is circle number 3 with the red blade. So basically at this point, you're just going to start making those circles wherever you can on the page. So they show one over here. I am going to get it tight as I can. Circle T, we're going to do a full circle, but we'll end up cutting that circle in half. If you really, really want to, and you're really all about saving paper, you could come in and do a half circle. If you've got your circles marked to be able to do something like that, you could do a half circle, or you could just go ahead and cut a full circle and then cut it in half. And I'll show you how to cut it in half once we've made the circle. So we cut 3 of them. You need 3 of them with the red blade, inside track of circle number 3. There's 1. 2, and 3. Whoops. I did not get my blade in there well. Let's try this again. There we go. So there's my 3 larger circles. Now I need 3 smaller circles, which are 2-inch circles. And to use a 2-inch circle, over here is where they tell us we're going to use the blue blade with the inside of the medium circle, which is circle number 2. So you can just get your circles wherever you can find space for the circles. So there I have three smaller circles. There's my circles out of the white mushroom paper. Now we're going to go back to the cone flower paper. So the cone flower paper, if you're all about saving and you're thinking, I want to use this for something else, the piece H is a mat for layout number 1. And when we have a mat, you would be able to come in if you really wanted to and probably cut the circle out of the one you actually use as a mat here. You could cut your circle out of that one. It's using circle number 3. It's a large circle with the inside track. And as long as you do a pretty good job of getting that centered in here, you'll be able to mount it on here and actually cover it up with your circle with your picture. So something to think about if you have photos you're going to be putting on right away, and you visually don't care if there's a gaping hole until you cover it with a photo. But if you go ahead and try to center this just as best you can, we're going to use the red blade on the inside track. And you should still be able to come in with that and have a photo on here. It'd be a pretty narrow, just an 1/8 inch mat all the way around, but that would work. Otherwise, can be scrapped. You can still save it for later. Even if you use the other mat, you could use this as another mat on the layout. Now we do have our gingham paper, our tangerine gingham paper, and we need 2 of the small circles, the 2-inch circles. We'll come back to circle number 2 and we will go ahead and cut those small circles with the blue blade inside track. There we go. 2 circles. So we've got 5 small circles. And 4 large circles, 3 white, 1 blue. One of the white ones I do need to cut in half. Piece T, they want me to cut this circle in half. To cut it in half, I'm going to grab my cutting, my rotary trimmer. I'm going to rotate my mushrooms to the side. My mushroom tops are faced over here. I want to make sure they're pretty straight over here, that they're not like tilted. I really want the tips to be going to the side because I need those mushrooms to be, well, we're using reverse, so it's not going to matter. If you want to flip it over and look at your wood grain, the wood grain, let me look at the original. Here's what we're doing. We're cutting this green piece. So you can see our wood grain on our main body is going to become vertical here. So we would like to see our wood grain be vertical here just so that that grain has that up and down presentation. So go ahead and you're going to cut across the grain. And you can see here, I have got my circle nestled down at the bottom. My camera will focus here. See how it's nestled down in here between these 2 pieces? If you have the Creative Memories rotary trimmer, that will give you a center cut circle. It doesn't work for all circle sizes. If I come in here with a 2-inch, it'd be pretty close. But if you get too small, it doesn't cut right. But it's a great place to start if you're trying to quickly find the center of a circle to cut it in half. So I'm just going to make sure that my grain overall is going side to side, and then I'll cut. I have 2 pieces. One of them is scrap. All right, so now we have all of our pieces cut, so it's time to start assembly. So for this, we're going to come back over to our original layout and we'll look at here, spread number 2. So we're going to need 1 sheet of blue cardstock for the left page and a sheet of green ferns designer paper, which is the cone flower, the blue cone flower. We'll flip this over. The pieces that we're going to need to put in place. We need our mushrooms paper. I'm going to go across the bottom. What's great about this is these mushroom papers are going to actually help us. I mean, the space that you don't even really need your cutting mat to be able to put these together because at least this layout, it's everything just lines up. So I'll go ahead and use some adhesive and get these stuck down. They go across the bottom. Obviously, make sure your your mushrooms are facing up. Now, one of the things to do when we're working with cardstock, I can see that my blue cardstock is a little bit wide for my piece. I'm talking like a 32nd of an inch, but just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I am going to make sure all of my pieces come in here to this, line up along this edge, and then I can make any little trim I need to on that outside edge. The blue, yeah, they said there is just a smidge of that blue showing on that other side. And then we'll go here with the right page. Next up, we have two pieces of the orange gingham or the tangerine gingham. The larger piece goes on the right page. The smaller piece goes on the left. And they just go right into that middle edge. Here on the left page, we need to find our coneflower pieces, our blue coneflower pieces. We should have a piece that fits in there nicely. And then we have that mat, the 4x6 mat is going to come over here on the right page. The other two pieces I'll set aside. They're going to be used in layout number 2, but I can go ahead and secure this larger piece of the coneflower on here. And here's where if you want to experiment a little bit on the different sides you want facing, you could certainly, dry fit everything into place. And see, I think I did. This was the change that I made in mine. I went ahead and, nope, I did this one and then did the green here instead of the white. I'll do this time with the white, the mushrooms. But before I used, I still did the coneflower, the blue here. So like this one, I thought it was fine to rotate either side, depending on if you were wanting to downplay the mushrooms, you could use the green side. If you want to keep the mushrooms as a reoccurring theme in your papers, you could use the mushroom side. So I am seeing here, I've got a little bit of space at the top. Now, one of the things I'm going to be doing down here is putting a sticker into place. So what I'm going to do is this piece right here, I'm going to shove it up to the top a little bit. I don't want to I don't have to trim off the top. I could, it's not a big deal, but I know I'm going to be covering at the bottom. I'm going to be putting on a sticker that's going to cover up any little gaps I have at the bottom. And the rest of the pieces for this particular layout are our mats. So you can put the mats on if you know where you want them to go for sure. The thing to note is on this page, our right-hand page, the 5.5 by 3.5 inch photos they have here do not have mats. So until you actually have your photos ready to put on, you may think, oh, I want to center this on my lighter green fern side, but it actually needs to be off to the side a little bit because you are going to come in with horizontal pictures here. So I would consider either, if you don't have your photos ready to go, I would consider just holding on to your mats or maybe just tacking them down with a little bit of repo adhesive. And that way you've got some flexibility there. Now it's time for us to go ahead and we put our border stickers on. And they just go right along the edge. I would definitely get those on before you put your photos on, just because that's going to help you know where to put all of your photos. You know, that you don't get them too far down. There we go. And then we'll do that on the other page as well. If you wanted to downplay the mushrooms here, if you didn't, you could save your mushroom stickers for something else and then just come in with a complimentary punched border along there. All right, so that is layout 2. There are, of course, additional stickers that they show you that you can put into place. The cute raccoons come into play. You can see how those all go in. I would recommend putting those on after you've put your photos. Then you can see if you need to adjust placements or see how they would technically actually overlap your photos on the mats. So you want to make sure that you have those, the photos on there before you put your stickers on so that you can overlap things. I do see a comment about, yes, that there is using placeholder pieces. Helen is mentioning that. And that is if you want to make some white cardstock or just use letter paper from your printer and cut the size of photos that Creative Memories suggests, you could do that and that will help you with spacing. If you want to be able to put all of your mats in place, if you traditionally use the projects just as they show, if you cut your photos down to match. All right, so that is layout number 1. Next up with layout number 2, we are going to need our tangerine gingham paper, and our tangerine cardstock is going to be, we're going to use that on the left or the right paper. And then we are going to use the piece of tangerine gingham for the other side. So here's our 2 pieces of background papers. We are going to use, we'll start with over here with the left page. We need our cone flower paper, the larger strip of it here. It was like, I don't know, piece I, whatever size that was, 3 inches tall. And it's going to go along the bottom edge. You're definitely going to want to use the blue side because it's going to give you nice contrast for those smaller circles that we're going to put along the bottom as kind of a border detail. Now we should have that narrow piece of mushroom paper. It was 1/2 inch. Mine fell on the floor. That's where it went. You can come in if you want to use the mushrooms, you can. The other side is green. So just real quick, let's just take a peek of what this would look like if I were to use the green over here. So on this side page over here, I need to have the green wood grain. And then I use the blue cone flower strip. So I could, if I wanted to, I could have, kind of their opposite each other. So then what we would do is we have 2 mats. I have 2 green 4x6 mats come in place there. And then they do, if we're bringing the mushrooms in with we could just alternate. If you wanted to completely leave the mushrooms out, you could just use all of the green and the blue. So this is no mushroom paper showing. The opposite side over here, you're going to have to, make that work. We've got some scrap pieces if we wanted to come in. So just in case you're wanting to dial back some of that mushroom paper. If you don't care so much, or if you like the mushrooms, that's going to work with your themes. Go ahead. I'm gonna take the mushrooms out of this piece here using the green, but I'll flip these pieces over to show mushrooms here. Okay. I'm going to grab my cutting mat to make sure I get these circles spaced evenly. There's 5 of them, so we're going to make sure that the first circle we put in place is going to be lined up at the bottom at the 6-inch mark, that it straddles that 6-inch line. The first one I'm going to put in is going to be the green. And I'm just going to kind of loosely set it on there. I'm not going to push down super hard. I just want to make sure that it gets spaced in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to space, I'll put my orange ones on the outside, my tangerine gingham on the outside edge. If I want to use, I might grab my T-square ruler and make sure I've got everything lined up evenly across the top edge of I'm about a 1/2 inch from the bottom, it looks like. Here's my T-square. You come in here and just find out where that top edge is. Yeah, I'm a 1/2 inch from the top of the blue, or this blue coneflower piece is 3 inches tall. So I am coming up about 2.5 inches from the bottom edge with my T-square. And that's where I'm just a little bit below that. But regardless of where you light it up, just make sure they're all even across, that the top is hitting your T-square. Make sure your paper is straight. And it's like this last piece over here, I'm going to go ahead and put my tangerine touches in. So I like my tangerine. I like my green, looks pretty good, pretty centered there. Push it into place and then push this tangerine into place as well. Now what I'll be able to do is all I have to do is center these ones in between here. That's going to be the easiest way. So you always put your middle piece in first, then your outside piece, and then you center in the middle between those pieces. Just got a little piece I'm going to, there you go. And I put that on the wrong side. Yeah, Thandi thinks she's going to dial back some of the wood grains. So that's definitely where, if you wanted to, the wood grain's not working for you, you could definitely dial it back. Just flip the pieces over, play around with it a little bit and see what works best for you and for your photos. That's going to be the biggest thing is, trying to figure out what's going to be best for your photos. This right-hand page, we just put the green on. Again, my green piece of paper, my tangerine looks to be a little bit probably taller than my 12-inch designer paper. I can see a little bit of tangerine across the top. So I'll just trim that off later. The coneflower strip of paper here. I'm flush along this bottom edge with my green, so that's where I'll come flush again with the blue. That way, if the blue also doesn't go the full length of my tangerine paper, I will have just this edge across the top. Over here on this page, I am going to have the white mushrooms, the coneflower, and then the white mushrooms again. So line up my paper. I need to come across here at 6 inches. This is a little bit bigger of a piece. I'm going to fold it ever so slightly. Well, actually, what I can do is I'll go ahead and before I assemble this, I'm going to put my green paper on here. The reason is that's going to give me a line where the halfway is. That's my 1/2 inch, or the halfway across my circle. So I'll come in here and add I have my mini cutting mat over there. I'm gonna put my circle on, my green half circle. Now I can come in here at 6 inches with my ruler, and I have to line to get this on here. I'm just gonna line up my half where that half circle comes across my T-square. That's gonna be midpoint. So I'll know I have my this circle centered top to bottom, and it's easy enough to center. There we go. And then I can put these other pieces on. Mushroom tops facing up. And then you'll be able to come in with some photos for the top and bottom mats. You can use a photo here if you want, but they do have it with the cute little stickers. So once you get all of your stickers put in place, you will have, you add stickers along the bottom edge over here. Okay, the reason I have this piece here, I messed up when I did when I did it initially. I cut that other paper wrong. Remember, I mentioned at the beginning when I first made the project recipe, I cut the paper wrong. So I had to open a second project recipe to get out a piece of paper to make it work right. So I had it left over. So I added a little bit more gingham behind here because I just had the extra pieces. But the stickers, everything here is applied per the project recipe. And the second page, I also stayed true to what they did. And you would have two horizontal photos coming in here, circle photos, and then the cute little hedgehogs. So that is the layout number 2 for the project recipe. All right. So are there any questions on the project recipe itself? Hopefully that's pretty straightforward. The biggest thing, if you are the type to write notes, you will definitely want to make sure in your cutting guide that I see how I wrote that on the side. The mushroom tops need to be on designer piece 1. That is the biggest thing that you need to make sure you do. Everything else comes together real smooth. You just need to make sure on that very first cut for the first tangerine gingham paper, you better off cutting it with the mushroom side up and make sure the mushrooms are to the side. All right. I am ready, I think, to toss it over to Tessa if she is ready to start assembling some things.
Hi guys. Good afternoon. I will say there's no pressure. You don't have to turn your camera. But for those of you that have your camera on, I do enjoy seeing your faces. It's like friend time, friend chat, talking to people instead of black screens. And I stalked while Megan taught to see who had their cameras on so I could see your face. All of our friends out there in the online world. This is very cute and springy, but geez, it feels like winter here. My UPS driver came while Megan inside to open the front door, and I had a lot of boxes show up today, and it is just it's just bitter out there. So I just keep ignoring the outside until it warms back up. But like Megan said, we are going to work on the project booklet. So while you're putting your pieces to the side, you do not need anything from what you just did with her. Those layouts can sit to the side. And we are basically starting fresh. And so you just need your trimmer. You don't even need your circles. So you can put those over to the side also. And yeah, it's fine. We know not all of you are going to do camera on. There's no shame in it. You be you, show up however you can. We're just happy that you joined us. So for this, so the rest of the customer bundle included the project booklet. So this is where the instructions are. We don't have digital rights to send this out, which is why we don't send out any handouts for the class. This is all Creative Memories content. You need the accessory paper pack that came in your bundle. You need the cardstock sampler. And then there's a little mat kit, the little layered embellishments, and then the larger embellishment pack. So pretty much everything else that came your way in that bundle, you will need. And they do use every scrap in this. There's literally nothing left over. We don't use the mushroom punch in it, but I have a couple punch just to show you places that you could fit those in if you want to. So what did you guys think about that? So they've gotten feedback in the past where the punch is part of the bundle or it's optional. Actually, I think last time they left the punches out, but they included them in the bundle or the project, I should say. So you could leave them out or add them if you wanted to. This time they didn't even include the punch in the project bundle because it was optional. And I don't know which way people prefer. I know it is, I can turn on my main, it is a little dark. I have every light on. I think that the camera is confused that it is darker outside. I have every light on that I have on for power hour, and it is daytime in here. So let me turn on my overhead. It's going to be a little bit different light to see if that helps.
I think some of it might be your camera auto adjusting because you are using a different tie into your computer this time.
Yeah, yeah, it's
And
not, I have,
we'll see if it improves. It might improve as you remove some of the lighter pieces. I don't know. It just seems like it's a little darker than it normally is.
that's true. I like while you were going, I turned on all my lights. So um, I
Or
might
just
not be able to do it this way next time.
pull away the light paper. I'm just whether it's going to auto
Oh,
adjust. Okay,
correct.
Hazel's saying it looks okay to her, and that could be fine. Maybe it is a little bit more at my end. I have my brightness turned up on my screen all the way, but I think we'll continue just keep going unless we run into major significant issues.
I know the other options have to completely go off and come back on. I know it does feel dark in here. I turned on every light, and if it was nighttime, it would be glowing on here. But okay, well, hopefully we can figure
Everybody's saying
all
it's
this out.
okay, so as long as everyone else is fine with it, then let's just keep rocking and rolling.
Okay. And it sounds like, yeah, the punch. So the punch is optional, which people like the punch is optional in the bundle. Would you, even if it's an optional punch, do you wish that they include it in the project, or do you just want to add it yourself if you can? That's the question. Okay, so what do we need to get started? Just need your trimmer and the cardstock and the paper. I'm going to set all the components to the side. This is a 6-pack of paper. So you don't need your cover sheet, but that's always helpful to have for white mats or if you need to break in your punches. So you should have all 6 of these sheets and the cardstock. If you are not assembling these all the way together today, what I did after my first round is, you guys know Megan and I both like the paper sleeves from Stamp and Storage. We have simple sleeves now from Creative Memories. I like the two-sided ones. All of the mats and embellishments, I hesitated to adhere because I don't quite know where my photos are going to go. And so I went ahead and just got a folder for each layout. So I have the pieces sorted by layout and I can keep them with the base pages until I'm ready for that. And so after we make all the base layouts, we will sort out the mats and embellishments per layout. So you can put them with the layout and you can see as we go how they adhere. So the first step is the cutting guide, and there are 5 sets of layouts. We are going to pull out the pieces that we're going to use for here, and the rest will go to the pile for the base paper. So we need both sheets of the blue gingham. The backside is this floral print. We need the orange Let's Get Wild. We need one of the dark ferns. And then the peach mushrooms, which are the back of the Let's Get Wild. And then a sheet of the blue cardstock. So the rest of this are base pages. Okay. I was looking at your comments about the punch. Why you guys outsorted your paper? Yeah, it's some people were really excited about the mushroom. Other people chose to pass. Okay, so we're going to just need the trimmer. And then if you want, or if you're watching, or if you're not making them yet, I will go through this two ways. We all like to sort things differently. I did go through and I marked on my paper which layout each piece went to. When I cut them, I'm not going to sort them when I cut. I'm just going to cut a piece of paper and put it in a pile to the side. I think it's easier for me if I just know each pile. And then when I get to the layout, I can refer back to the letter it's showing me and I know which pile it's in, rather than trying to sort them all at once. However, it's always nice to have a cross check. And so as I go through to cut them, I will tell you what layout the piece goes to. So what you want to write that down or not, it's completely optional. And we're going to pull them as we go also, but that's what I did. So we need your trimmer as a first step. We need a sheet of the blue.
Oh dear. Can you guys still hear? Did she disappear? Yep. Okay. Hold on just a second.
Okay, we're back. A little technical difficulty, but we're back. We're cutting our first gingham paper. We turned it horizontal, so our mushrooms are going side to side. So the first cut was at 3 inches, and we're going to turn this at the end and cut it in half. Our second cut is 4 inches, and that leaves 5 inches. And we got to turn this first one. We're going to cut this in half, so we have two 6-inch sections. So as far as number, if you want to number your pieces on your sheet, A and B both go to layout number 5. C, which was the 4 inches, goes to layout number 1. And D, the last piece, goes to layout number 4. And again, I'm leaving all of mine in their pile to the side. You probably won't be able to see all my piles off camera. A little easier for me to pull as I go. When you cut that one, you want your mushrooms facing side to side. So it shows blue gingham on here, but when you cut that first sheet, look at your mushrooms, and then you want the caps facing side to side when you cut.
I don't understand. I don't understand.
So you have mushrooms on your paper. They're either facing up and down or side to side, depending on how you have your paper sitting.
Got it.
And then you'll just want to turn that when you cut. And that means that our mushrooms will be facing the right way, even though it shows the blue gingham here, like Meggan did with the recipe, it matters on the back how the mushrooms sit afterwards. And then for the next sheet, we're just going to leave it as is. And let me validate myself. So L, I wrote down my notes, but I've slept a couple of times since then. Piece L, yeah, piece L is going to sit vertically on the paper. So we're going to leave it so our mushrooms are going up and down. We're not going to rotate this sheet. And the difference with this sheet is I'm going to start cutting the same, actually. I'm going to go left to right. So I'm going to cut 3 inches, and then we're going to get into our skinny pieces. When I cut my skinny pieces, which are the F and G, the 1 inches and the little ones, I'm going to actually measure over here. So I'm going to do 2 1 inches. And another 1 inch. And then we need 4 half-inch pieces. It's always a good reminder, if you are getting jagged cuts, you probably need to rotate your trimmer mat. I rotated mine this week when I worked on this, and it really does make a difference in the smoothness. Okay, so we have 4 of those, and what that leaves is 5 inches, and we're leaving that at 5 inches. And so for those of you just watching and marking your paper, I'll read through the pieces. So E was the 3-inch piece. This goes to layout number 1. Our 1 inches go to layout number 3. And then we have our skinny strips. 2 of them will go to layout 1. 2 will go to layout 2. And then the last piece will go to layout number 4. So if you're watching a recording, you can also pause it and just rewind that to come back. You hear them all again. Okay, now we're going to cut our Let's Get Wild. It has the print on there. It's orange. And the words are going horizontally, so I can read one set of them. Looking at the paper, we're going to start on and cut 2 inches. So piece M. And then we need to rotate what's left. And we're going to start cutting from the top down. So I need 2 2-inch pieces. I'm going to make sure I really am on my lines. So 2 inches, 2 inches. And then I need a 6-inch piece, but more importantly, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to cut another 2-inch piece. So this strip along the bottom is all going to get cut into 2-inch blocks. Sometimes when we've made a lot of cuts, we end up with maybe a little less than 2 inches. I want to make sure these really are 2 inches. So I'm going to cut this. If my 6-inch piece is a little short, we'll just deal with it there. So that the 6-inch piece, have my final 2-inch piece, and I need to cut this into 5 2-inch blocks. So this is where you want to be a little intentional. Try to make sure you're at the same, right at the 2-inch line, because, a 1/16 of an inch here or there does add up, because these are going to stack on the layout later. They're a little short. It's a little short. I mean, I don't want to act like it's do or die. I just know when I cut mine, I ended up with one that was a little short. So that gives me 5 2-inch squares. So I'm going to read through the pieces. So that first piece was the piece M, which goes to layout number 1. Then I have the 2 by 10-inch strips that are layout number 1. The fat piece will go to 3. And then all these little pieces are going to go to layout number 2. Stack these up over here. Now we need to cut our green fern paper. On this one, the back side is wood grain, and I didn't make a note, so let me double check, because I do want to make sure we cut the wood grains. Okay, we want the wood grain. We're going to turn the wood grain to the side. So instead of cutting it with a fern up, cut it with the wood grain up, and the wood grain is going to go horizontal like this. If you don't get it right, it's fine. It'll look fine. So I'm going to actually start on this one. I'm going to start cutting on the far right. We have these 2 little 1/2-inch strips we're going to cut first. So 2 1/2 inches. Then I need 6 1-inch strips. Okay, and then what we have left is 5 inches. And same as before, I need a 2-inch strip that's going to go into squares and a 3-inch piece. So I'm going to cut the 2-inch off first to make sure I'm as accurately at 2 inches as I can be. And that's going to leave the 3-inch piece. And I'm going to turn this one, and instead of 4, I need 5. I need all of this is going to be cut into 2-inch squares. And 2 of these we need to cut in half into 2 triangles. So save 2 of them. When I cut triangles, I just like to center it point to point down, either the dotted line or everywhere you can tell your cut line is. And so I think some of you have noticed on the trimmer, sometimes depending on how the mat is in or the blade housing, sometimes your cut line isn't exactly down your dotted lines. But once you've made some cuts, you can see where the cut line is on your trimmer mat. So I'm just going to put the points of my triangles on there. If you have trouble holding it, you can put a little dot of repositional tape under it. I can usually keep one hand on each side of it. And then when I start to cut, I don't want to cut against the tip of the triangle. I'm going to start in the middle and then go up and then come back down to cut it in half. That gives us little triangles. So reading off my pieces, so all of these little pieces we just cut with the triangles. These are all going to layout number 2. Oh, we didn't cut this. We got to cut this one in half. We're going to cut this 3-inch piece in half. So you need 2 6-inch pieces out of that. These are both going to go to layout number 5. Then we have everything else is going to go in layout number 4. So it's pretty simple sort when we get to those layouts. That brings us to the peach mushrooms. Again, with the mushrooms, I'm looking at the mushrooms going top to bottom. Some pretty basic cuts here. We can start by cutting 6 inches. And I'm going to cut 3 inches. So these 2 pieces, the 3-inch pieces, I'm going to cut in half at 6 inches each. These are going to pair up on the same layout as those other ones we just cut at the same size. And then on our long 6 by 12-inch piece, I'm going to turn it. I'm going to cut one end, and I need 2 inches. And you guessed it, we're going to do 2-inch squares. Or get a feel for which of these pieces are going to start lining up on the same layouts. So 3 2-inch squares. So my little 2 inches will all go layout number 2. The big piece goes to layout number 3. And then my 3 by 6s all will go to layout number 5. Our final cut is the blue cardstock. Again, this is pretty simple. One note about it, if you really like to preserve cardstock, in the end, the first cuts are 2 inches and 2 inches. You're only going to see 1 inch of it because they layer it. So if you want to, you can just cut 2 1-inch pieces and a 2-inch piece and save it. I'm going to cut it that way just to kind of have the extra to see where I want to stick it. And then we're going to cut 2 sets of 4 by 6 mat. So I'm going to do 1 inch, 1 inch, 2. If you want to follow the directions exactly, it's 2 2 inches. I kept looking at it like, what's the point of it? Why didn't they save? I don't know if they just didn't want to leave anything extra. But 2 by 12 inch strip, I mean, you could punch some mushrooms with that if you wanted to. Okay, so 1 inch, 1 inch, two. And then I'm going to cut this in half. So I'll have 4-inch strips that I will turn and cut into mats. All of this is for mats too. So if you're not one who likes pre-made mats, then just leave this whole sheet of blue intact. And you can make your mats whatever size fits your photos later. And I think that gets us through all the cutting. So mine are all off camera, but I have my little piles of what I cut around me. And we're going to move on to spread number 1. And again, for those of you maybe just tuning in, we're going to make all the bases, and then we're going to come back through and sort our embellishments. As you look at these layouts, you can see that the embellishments and the mats are really just kind of clustered around your photos. And so until you really know where your photos are going to go, I would not adhere them down, but we do want to sort them so you know what goes with what. And so our first one, we need a sheet of pumpkin and a sheet of blue cardstock for our bases. So find your pile of base papers. We have pumpkin on the left and blue on the right. And I'm going to grab my pieces. So I need M and E. So that's that 3-inch wild, that piece M. So it's a 2-inch sheet of the Go Wild, the longest one in your pile. And then E was a gingham on the front, and E was a 3-inch on the back of its mushroom. So it's a second mushroom cut that you did, the pile with all the skinny pieces, and there's a 3-inch strip in there. So you have your gingham 3-inch and then that one for that. On this side, we need C and H. So C was a mushroom. That's out of our first sheet. It's a 4-inch piece. So your first mushroom 4-inch piece. And H was the fat gingham. It's the, oh no. See, this is where I got confused. I kept looking for the fat one. They're going to use skinny ones. So it's H and I, which were skinny plaids, the 1/2-inch pieces. You need 2 1/2-inch plaids. I kept thinking that was layered, and it's not layered, which is smart. It's a conservative use of paper. And then N and O are the 2 by 10-inch Go Wild strips. So I'm going to dry fit them first so that if you're still looking for your papers, you see how they fit. We have the 3-inch blue gingham, the 2-inch Go Wild. We have our 4-inch mushrooms. That's going to have 1/2-inch gingham on each side. And then the 2 by 10. This side adheres pretty obviously. We're going to adhere the gingham to the right of the base paper. And you can decide to, if Meggan was trying to minimize her mushrooms. If you want to love the mushrooms, you can use the flip side and use blue gingham. You could also flip this for the peachy mushrooms. As you go, before you adhere, you can decide which side you actually want to see up. It's completely up to you. I do actually like the mushroom print, but I'm going to make it as shown. And we're going to hear this one next to it. So that's the left side. The rest of this side is just 2 mats, which we'll pull at the end, and some embellishments, and then room for photos. On this side, when you're adhering, we're going to start in the middle with your 4-inch strip. So whether you're using a ruler, your cutting mat, you want to find the 8 and the 4-inch marks. You're going to center your print down the middle of that. with the mushroom side up, or you can do blue gingham. You're going to have to choose if you want mushrooms as your base or the blue gingham strips. You'll have to alternate one or the other because they do sit side by side. And remember, a lot of times our cardstocks, the margin of error is a little bit larger than our paper. So inevitably at one end or the other, your paper isn't going to cover it. On each side of that, we're going to adhere our 1/2-inch blue strips. Either right down the edge, you can overlap it slightly if you want to make sure you really don't see the blue cardstock peeking from underneath. Using repositional tape on these just in case I don't get it lined up. Very often what happens for me is I re-adhere. And then adhering these pieces on top, we're 1 inch off the edge. And so if you want to make sure that your base paper is on the edge of the mat, we're going to do this 1 inch from each edge. If you're not confident in your eyeballs, you can always grab your T-ruler and adhere it flushed up next to that. The words go up and down, so it doesn't really matter which way you adhere this. If you don't like the words, you could use the mushrooms, the peachy mushroom showing up. I could hear this one on the bottom. Do you guys like to eat mushrooms? I actually love mushrooms. I love cooked mushrooms. I'll eat them in salads. I'm proud to say that my kids have slowly acclimated to taste too, which is fun for me. I think they're delicious. Okay, so that is it for layout number 1 for our base pages. We can set those to the side. We'll come back to them at the end. We're going to move on to layout number 2. For this one, we need the wood grain brown and a sheet of hot fudge. So the hot fudge on the right. And the wood grain on the left. The wood grain, the grain is going vertically. And then this is the layout we need all those little 2-inch squares for. And then we need our other 2 1/2-inch mushroom strips. So we need 6 of the squares for each layout. The back side of the wood grain is the green. I'm looking, there's one of the peach. I've lost some squares in the pile. Oh, they're out top. So you can try, if you want to change how they adhere, you can, or you can follow the guide. If you're looking at the peach side of the mushrooms, making sure they're going up and down. If you're the words, make sure you can read them. And the ferns don't really matter. And this is worked out, even with as hard as I try, it's the same thing that happened where, one of my mushroom pieces ends up a little wider than the others. It's fine. We're going to adhere and flush to the edge because our strips are going to cover up any difference that we have in it. It's always easier for me to turn. So I'm adhering my squares closer to me. I'm going to start at the bottom and go up. I'm going to use repositional tape in case I need to readjust. Sounds like some people love mushrooms with me. Some people can't stand them. I'm going to choose, I always get mushrooms on pizza. I love mushroom and Swiss burgers. I've never gone mushroom hunting. I think that's more of a Northwest thing. Although people do it here in Indiana, but I'm not tuned into when that is. Okay, so if you're like me and inevitably, I don't know, this happened to me again. Did you guys have, so like one of your squares is a little bit bigger than 2 inches or maybe off? If that's true, depending on if it was a vertical or horizontal facing, you might be a little bit short at one end of your paper. But the problem is mine's a mushroom and I can't turn it on either way or the direction's going to be wrong. It's fine. I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to put this one together on this side. Remember, I'm not turning this one, so I'm going to make sure that I can see them all correctly sitting on the map. One other funny note about mushrooms. So last year for spring break, how many of you are from Missouri? Anybody from Missouri here? And maybe in Colorado too, but when the twins and I went to Branson last year for spring break, it was funny. As soon as we got to Missouri, I started seeing the billboards for psychedelic mushrooms, which apparently must be legal. I'd never seen a billboard actually advertising them before. I've never tried them. I've only eaten them. Okay, and once you have your squares down, we are going to adhere these 1/2 inch strips. We can see the mushroom print. You can always flip it too if you'd rather see the gingham. If you have a little bit of difference in your length, then I would adhere this so it's slightly overlapping. So I'm looking at my cutting mat and this is a 1/4 inch. So I'm just going to adhere it about 1/8 of an inch below the 2 with repositional tape, of course. Then when I get to the other end of the mat, I'm just looking to make sure I'm at the same ruler measurement, or you can get your T-ruler out. And then same for this one. I didn't have the issues so much over here, but I am going to overlap it anyways, just for consistency. I don't think I'd be able to tell, but in case I can tell. So this is layout number 2. The rest of the pieces, like I said, we're going to sort at the end. So you can set this to the side. And we're going to move to project 3. For this one, we need pumpkin and tangerine. I told Megan, I think this is the first time that I was like okay with the tangerine and did not sub it out. I think it still glows, like it glows, but it's workable. I just would love to see us swap out tangerine for more of a true pale peach that is not neon. And then we're going to use our strips for this one. So we need strips of our blue. And this is where they show you the 2-inch pieces, but if you notice at the top, you're covering it up with the blue gingham anyway. So this is, I have this 2-inch strip that's going to be extra. You can use that for something else later. And then I have my 1-inch strips for the top. This one has 2 of the blue mats for photos. I need my blue gingham 1-inch strips. The back is a mushroom print. And then down here, I need those larger pieces. I have the Let's Get Wild. Yes, the words are going vertically. And then we need our pale peach mushroom. The bad side about flipping this is like it's still the wrong orientation on the back if you go to the back of the mushrooms. So it did feel less offensive to have the words running up and down. We're going to dry fit it. This is how it will adhere. Again, the mats are optional. You can just save those for when you're ready for them. So we're going to hear the blue along the top, the blue gingham underneath it. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and adhere these 5-inch pieces just in case they're a little bit tall on the layout, based on those little micro differences in our cuts, it will be overlapped by the gingham. If you don't like the words going vertically in the end, you could always just rotate this layout. Before you put photos on there. I'm just making sure that when I have these strips, yes, I will cover the whole. So I'm going to adhere the blue first along the top. You need to turn it if you can't stand up or you're working sitting down. Just turn your layout. I'm going to adhere this right along the top edge. And then the blue gingham. Also, I think I'm hanging off. I'm going to reach it. This one's hanging off that end a little bit, and I'm a little short on this one. My blue gingham does overlap both just slightly, which is nice. Barely. No, that's off. I do not want to see the orange between. That's the nice thing about using the 2 inches is that you have a little bit of grace to see in the overlap. I'm going to hear the blue at the top of this one too. And my blue gingham down the middle. So if you don't like the words like that, you could turn this. If I turned it, I probably would put the words at the bottom. So I'd move this to the left side of the layout. The mushrooms, you have to leave this one going vertically. You're going to have sideways mushrooms, but that's how I would change it if you don't like that. And then the final step are the borders. I don't want to open a whole nother set, but you're going to grab these borders out of your embellishments. You can do it now or later. There's nothing else to do on this layout until we pull the final step. So you can just wait till the end to pull these out when we sort. But you're going to adhere your borders there along that edge. And that is layout number 3. So moving on to 4, we need Kelly and hot fudge. This one goes together very quickly also. And you can probably tell what's left. We need our long strips. So we should have the big piece of mushroom, our 1-inch wood grains, our 1-inch fern pieces. Those are the same paper, wood grain and fern. On this side, we have our other piece of mushroom paper. And the 1-inch strips. So this is the same concept here on the left as we did previously, where I'm going to adhere the centerpiece first. This is different though. It is a 5-inch piece. And so when you are measuring up against your layout, you're going to be 3.5 inches down. So it's going to kind of look like between the 3.5 and the 9 or 8.5, centered down there. You do want to make sure that you have the piece that the mushrooms are going up and down. Then we're going to adhere our fern strips above and below. Like I do go through a lot of repo tape on these layouts because there's so many strips. It does tone down the Kelly. I feel like the Kelly is pretty bright on this layout, so it's nice that we're just seeing small selection of it. And over here on the hot fudge, we're going to adhere left to right. Mushrooms, then the ferns, then our wood grain piece. And that's it until we sort our mats and embellishments. And then our last one is the remaining pieces. So the tangerine and Kelly should be what you have left. Tangerine on the left, Kelly on the right. And then we have all of our little 6-inch pieces. Get them all in place. Make sure your mushrooms are facing appropriately. And again, you can switch here if you want to see mushrooms, but they're going to be going side to side. So if you want to rotate your layouts, you could flip those. And then we have our wood grain strips to connect them together. So I'm going to start left to right along the bottom. Actually, I'm going to start right to left. And the reason is if the tangerine ends up being a little wider than my papers, it's going to show over here next to the orange paper, and it won't be as obvious as if I have a little bit of a gap here with the tangerine. You're going to see it. So I'm going to make sure my green is on the edge. So I'd start over here and go left. Yeah, it's just slightly. Just slightly. And I'm going to adhere the wood stripes along the top. Same concept as before, just about 1/8 of an inch below the 6-inch mark, just to make sure I cover the tops of those. Same concept over here. I'm going to start left to right. I'm going to adhere the orange first and the green last. So if any Kelly peeks through, it's over there by the green. If for some reason on your cuts, the papers are a little wider than the cardstock needs to be, just adhere it down the edge and overlap the piece next to it. And then adhere the wood stripes down the middle. That tangerine does glow, but we're going to cover a little bit up with mats and then, of course, photos. And then the only pieces you should have left are the wood grain triangles, which they do set aside for this layout. You can see that they are photo corners on the layout, so can't adhere them yet. But if you want to grab your mats and your embellishments and the mini embellishments, I'm going to sort them layout by layout. And we're going to show where they sit on the page, and you can decide if you want to actually adhere them now. You could also just bag them up per layout. So if you guys, like when you go through the embellishments, I never throw away those extra Ziploc bags. They're nice for maybe collecting pieces together for layouts like this. It's behind me on my stack. So for this layout in our mats, I did like the change of pace this time where we got extra embellishments and mats instead of the laser papers. So for this one, you can see on your project booklet, it does show 2 mats. The one with the green mushroom would go up in the top left, and overlapping with one of the photo corners. We have the orange mushroom down on the lower right with the wood grain. We have 2 of our blue, which is nice. I think that blue pops really nicely. And then to see the embellishments, and they were cute too. So one of the mats, this is a 4x6 mat cut in half. So there's a wood grain little small box. We have our frame. We have the blue flower. This has lines in there. It could be a little journal box if you don't want to layer on. If you do want to layer, there's a wild and free circle embellishment that would fit, but I think I would journal in there. It's like, it's just such a perfect little spot. They show the orange flower on the top right. So there's a photo corner up here, and the little, you could journal in too. It's more of a dot pattern, but that could be for a little title or date. The explore. And then one of the layered ones. So down there in the lower left, they have the photo corner. They show a place for a photo. And then once you have your photo in place, you could adhere this one on top of it. You see what I mean? This one's a little challenging to adhere anything without actually having your photos. I'm going to bag these back up and save them. This is one of those little baggies. I think jewels came in. You know, some of our embellishments have the jewels, and it has a little square, which is helpful. Little square package. Oh, forgot that one. Oh yeah, thank you for the reminder. So for the punched mushroom border, I punched two. So the mushroom's not actually a chain. It looks like it's a chain, but there's a couple ways to cut it. So you can punch it and cut a thin straight edge. You could also get your scissors and fussy cut along the stem, so it truly looks like a chain. Or you can cut it and use the swell edge of the trimmer. I'm trying to put where you can see it and do it. So you could tuck these borders anywhere on the layout. I like the swell edge if you're gonna put it along the bottom, that if you have room for that, just adds a little dimension. Or the straight, if you cut the straight, you can cut it kind of thin. If you want to get it all the way down there, it makes it look like they're at least sitting on the ground. Of course, you can make that wider as you want. So you could tuck it. You could also put mushrooms along where we put the wood grain. It is a little bit of a fatter punch, so it also depends on, you know, where you want your photos, how much you want to overlap with those. You could also tuck one up here if you did a straight cut. I think that would be pretty. And this is just punched with white because that's what I had. But I think the white does pop nicely with the inside of the journal boxes if you leave them as such. If you put photos on there, you don't have as much white to pull out. But hot fudge would work really nicely there too. I just would not do the swell edge. So I'm going to go backwards. That's probably how you have your layout stacked. So the next set backwards was layout number 4. This one has adorable embellishments on it. We have our 2 pages. And then there's this really fat wreath embellishment that makes a nice statement in the middle. They show what looks to be like a 4x4 photo centered in it. And then we get to use the bear. The other half of the journal box we cut with the wood grain for the last layout. They show it tucked behind the bear. And they layered on the life's adventure, live it wildly. And then over on the right side, they have space here for 3.5-inch photos. You could easily do 4 or overlap 4x6s on top of the strips. And then they show these wreaths, not wreaths, fern leaves in the corners. If you want to add mushrooms for this one, you could add one along the bottom over here, but I would make sure you have kind of a contrasting, maybe like a dark green or something to pop out against the print. I actually punched this border in a brown that's not hot fudge on purpose so that if I did have it layered on the brown, it would stand out against hot fudge. You're going to have a little bit of a tonal effect. And then you could use this, somewhere else. Or if you have a straight inch, you could work in your mushrooms on the left at the top or along the bottom. I think I like it on the top up there. It is asking for a substitute for Kelly. It is a lot of green. I think if you have evergreen in your stash, I think our dark green is going to be a little bright still. I don't know. You do have the greens in here. Dark green might look okay, or the evergreen. If you go a darker green, it's not going to be as bright. You could also use blue on here because you see the mushroom print, that blue cardstock, I think would complement nicely. Here's this 2-inch strip we didn't use. And if you already have this put together and you're like, it really is too much green for me, you can always cover it up too. So the blue would tone it down. If you did use blue over here, this side doesn't have blue, but you could bring in blue with mats. Would complement nicely. You could do 2 4x6 there. Have the little fern leaves. And then a little mushroom at the bottom. I do like the idea also, the monochromatic brown. So you could find another tone of brown or use hot fudge down here too. The hot fudge does contrast the wood grain, so you could easily have it next to there, which is, it's the same effect as over here, right? So that is layout number 4. I cannot bag up that frame. It is a little big. Which is why it's nice to have the sleeves. I really need to go back and find pictures for the twins. I think these would be cute layouts for kids. They had a woodland themed birthday when they were like 5 that these would look nice with. Okay, then we're going to back it up even farther to layout number 3. Like, where are my layouts number 3? Search those. These. So for this one, like we talked about, you would want to pull out the borders for the embellishments. And then they do show mats on here, which pulls it all together really nicely. They have the little blue gingham mushrooms. They have this orange floral. They suggest putting a circle. You could put a circle here too, your 4-inch. They suggest a 3.5 by 5.5 photo. Yeah, blue. This is one that you can cut in half. I didn't cut mine in half yet because I'm not sure I would have 2 small 2.5 by 3.5 photos. So I didn't want to commit to that because it could just be, a regular photo mat also down here in the corner. And then for the embellishments, we have the raccoon, the follow your path, and then he shows flowers sticking up behind him. And then the layered flower comes out of that layered pack that then you could adhere over here. I probably would not add mushrooms to this one since it truly is more of a floral theme. So like we have enough. There's enough design impact on this one because of the borders. This one I think was one of, I like this one. I like the way the blue popped the orange. You don't have that floral. She's saying she shouldn't have the floral mat. The back of the floral one is blue. Looks like our box with some bullets. Journal box, and the back of it is floral. We back up to layout number 2. Piles are getting deep, aren't they? All these piles of layouts. This one also pulls in some mats. So there is 4 that it shows us. One is this orange bullets and dots ones. They show it horizontal because they suggest putting a photo on there. If you want to use it for journaling, I would suggest using it vertically. They have the foliage mat. The back side of it is light blue mushrooms, so that would work also. Then we have the fern and this one. They show photo spots for all of these. If you use a 4x6 mat for a photo, you have to cut the photo down to like 3.5 by 5.5. And then quite a few embellishments on this one. They show another wreath with the fox. And the fox has some flowers tucked behind him. And then the Let's Get Wild layered. They show layered against one of the photos. And this side, this is a layered one. So that box on top of the mat on the right is a layered one. So you don't have to find any extra pieces for that. And then they show spots on here for additional photos. 4x4 or 4x5 would fit in here nicely. If you do have just a brief, little things to say, you could also journal or put a date or something on the peach mushrooms could be journaling spots if you fill this all with photos. To add mushrooms, you could easily add a layer of mushrooms here along the top in a color of your choice. I would just either layer above or below, the way they show them at. I don't like to layer and just see like part of the punched. I'm either going to go above it or like really layer down beneath it. So it depends on your photos. I would bring that down there if you do that. And over here, you could put mushrooms, you could cut a strip along the bottom if you wanted to have one hanging out down there. So I like this one too. I think because it does have quite a variety of the prints and colors all showing through. And then that brings us to the beginning of project number 1. This is how they have it sit on here. And then they pull out a couple of mats. One is blue The other is the mushroom and the journaling. One thing to note on here that they suggest trimming this down. If you want to use 3.5 by 5.5 photos here, they trim the mat down to fit. I haven't trimmed my mat yet. You could easily use 4 by 6. If you do that, there's not going to be any spacing in between. You could also cut that in half. So I would not commit to cutting this mat down unless you know for sure you need that as part of design. If your photos work, it works, but I don't want to commit you to that in advance. And then we have a nice little embellishment cluster over here on the right. So they have this fern. So let me pull out the other pieces first. They have the light mushroom, the blue mushroom that is on top of the hedgehog. Over here on the left side, they have the blue mushroom, or the big one, and then the little, there's so mushroom in my heart for you, so mushroom layer down here. And then they have this large fern embellishment. And what they did is they cut this one in half so that there's a little bit to layer on the right and a little bit to layer on the left. So this is one interesting thing to note about the project. Meggan and I noticed this on the last set, that they obviously make these handouts digitally. And sometimes they don't pay attention to the fact that they reverse the image. And so if you really get down to the detail, and I do when I put these together, because I have to make sure I really am pulling all the pieces, your ferns are going to face differently than theirs because they flip their image on the digital copy of here. So it's fine. It will look fine, but it's always funny to me when you find some of these little things that happen. So you'll cut this in half and can layer side to side, or leave it whole for now. And then you can layer it, wherever you want when the time comes. There's so much room in my heart for all of you. I'm so glad that you joined us today for NSD. So as far as adding mushrooms to this one, I think it's pretty full as is. You're gonna kind of get into the design if you do above and below. I wouldn't suggest that. You could punch a monochromatic rose, something down here in the middle. The white doesn't stand out, but you could use a green or the hot fudge. And I'm not sure I would put any over here. It depends on how you do your photos. And then at the end of the day, the only thing we have left that you should not have placed is this 2-inch blue piece that we had extra. You easily could fit this if you wanted blue mushrooms. It will fit down your punch, or you can save it for some other purpose. So I thought they did nice with this project. It was pretty simple, pretty easy to put together, lots of room for photos. And we actually found a spot for Tangerine to live in our lives. So we'll call it success for that. We've used it. We made a statement. Now can we retire it and move on to another color? When Meggan and I go to Mexico, I told her we're asking, can we please switch this out? So I don't know if they'll listen to us. Like, why? Why do we, I want to know, is there any tangerine lovers in the room? Does anyone just love it? No, everyone's shaking their head.
You have to understand too how Tessa, when I asked about telling them what her recommendation to me was on how I should approach the subject, she told me I should have a few drinks first. And then maybe I can go have a conversation about tangerine.
I think I suggested the drinks first because it'll take the edge off, because both of us hate it, and so at least if we're a little bit looser in it, maybe it'll feel more like a suggestion instead of a demand. I don't know. Maybe I will make sure it comes up with some. I want to know who chose this, who approved it. Because as Meggan has pointed out many times, it does not appear on camera or the screen the way it does in person. When you look at the layouts that they show, oh, it looks nice. And then you get it and it's literally glows. It's like a glowworm. Isn't that the color of the glowworm face? Do you guys remember the glowworms? I had a glowworm. Any children of the 80s here? I mean, I was born in the 70s, and the little face would light up at night. That's what I want to think of now every time I see these layouts. It does match the color wheel.
There's some people who enjoy tangerine in there, and we shouldn't totally just knock it, but it's even I will admit, when you look at tangerine on the sheets, when you look at tangerine on the like the sheets where they give us the recommended colors, it actually looks a little bit more like Caribbean orange. The recommended colors, it tones it down just a little bit. And I think that's for me is a discrepancy. I want to like the concept of tangerine, but the reality of it is it's just a little bright. It's kind of like how goldenrod, you're like, oh, I just want a nice sunny yellow, and like, oh, we've got some intensity to goldenrod. So just those minute changes. I've always called myself a little color sensitive, meaning that I just those nuances that I like things to be a little more matchy sometimes than our card stock. The reality of it is, and that's just their creative memories is always working to get those things dialed in. I think this is an area where we can just dial it in a little tighter on that particular tone.
What would it be if we had nothing to complain about? I think where the passion comes in is like we got tangerine over burnt orange, and you're like,
Yeah,
where's the
I would love to
logic in
see.
this? Like this is the how many of you would love burnt orange? I mean, it's just, that is a even in this layout would have looked
Well, and I think
nice,
that's
right?
that's an area that we got our gray in. Finally, it took a little while for them to come up with to find a gray that would color hold. They were having some issues with color fading on one of the previous renditions the manufacturer gave them. So I think they're working on it. They're going to be bringing out more of the shimmer colors. I know new shimmer colors, but some of the past ones we've only had in limited availability. I think is going to become more available to us in April. So that's part of the conversation too. I think is when we have our moment to talk in person with some of the leadership at Creative Memories, is just to encourage to continue to round out the offerings. If we have to keep tangerine, okay, let us bring in that burnt orange. If we're keeping some of these other colors, let's get some additional ones. I would love to see a medium brown.
Yeah.
We have a light brown and a darker brown, but we need a medium brown. You can never have too many card stocks, if you ask me, right? We could expand, we could double the number of card stocks we have and probably still not feel like we have enough.
Yeah, for those of you that aren't advisors, if you caught what Megan just said, they did tell us this week that they are going to bring out a shimmer sampler pack. And so you'll get one of each color. And that's what she's talking about is they are bringing back some colors, maybe a couple new ones into the line that we want. So we can think close to my heart. We're sad they're going out of business, but I think we might see some additions because of that gap in the market. And one of them is they're going to beef up the shimmers at least. And well, hopefully that translates to the regular colors. And yes, it is on the website. There's a coming soon section under bestsellers where you can see where those shimmers are showing up. So I know a lot of people will be excited about that. So we do have to say thank you. I mean, we will thank them for the things they are giving us and not
We'll
just
buy them a
completely.
drink at the all-inclusive resort and have that conversation.
I was after this week, I'm ready to go. I'm like, where's the warm weather? Like we got teased here. We had real good solid 50s and 60s spring, and now we're like back to winter. So I'm ready for some sun. But yeah, so thank you all for joining us. I think we answered most of the questions in the chat. Of course, you're welcome to, the layouts all look the same, but if you do something different, or if you want to show us what you do with the mushrooms or whatever, you're welcome to post that in the ideas group and let us see them. Coming up next, and this will go to YouTube, so we'll get the recording up. I'm sure she'll be on top of it by the end of the day. It'll be in YouTube. For anyone that missed it, wants to watch it again, it will be live there. We'll also email the link out to all of you guys. So you have that. We cannot share the handouts digitally. They're not our content. And so we would breach that by scanning them in and then sharing them. So if you don't have it, find a friend or something that you could get those from. And then next up, we have Power Hour, which is in April. We're
I
April.
can't
Yes.
remember what day we decided on now. I thought
It's
are we doing it before we go to Mexico or
no,
after?
it's after.
Okay,
It's
so it's
after.
okay, so it's got to be the 16th.
Yeah, so the April 16th, the third Tuesday in April will be Power Hour, and we will both be sunny and tan. And I will make sure Megan puts on her sunscreen this time. She didn't wear sunscreen last time on one of the days because she was going to be under the umbrella, and she got
I
a
learned.
little burned. I'm a little worried too because last year we went in May and we'd had sun here. April, I will be novice in the sun, so I will have to be very careful. And yes, it's March Madness. If you need me after this, I will be on the couch watching basketball. We are going to round one down here in Bloomington on Saturday to watch IU play the women. So we're going to stop scrapbooking and start watching basketball. Anybody with me?
I'm waiting for baseball. Opening days next week. Sorry.
Yeah.
I am not going to watch any basketball because when I watch basketball, the team I want to win loses. So I don't watch.
You should probably not watch then. Yeah.
No, I'm not going to watch.
Yeah, it was fun last night. We were watching, I don't usually watch the first four. So the first four that makes it to the whole tournament. And it's always fun to see schools you've never heard of. And then the one last night was Grambling State. I'm like, Grambling State, I've never heard of this. And now I can't remember. It's in Louisiana, I think. Yeah, it was a very close game. Campbell, I was in here working, and Mom's like, Campbell's like, you gotta come in here and finish this. It was like upset happening. Anyways. Okay, anything else you want to share? We good? All right. We'll catch you all next time. Thank you. See you later.